WHGE 95.3 FM, The Open Eye. All right, let's get this going here. Well, it looks really dark right there. Let's see. Oh, shit. What is this?
Those of us that indulge in or commit intellectual violence don't do so for the pleasure of mental masturbation or ego digging. We do so because the chains of oppression on our people's minds are deep and difficult to remove.
Good morning, my children of the sun. Welcome to The Open Eye on WHGE 95.3 FM. I'm your host, the third eye optometrist, Patrice Gibbs. Yes, indeed, here to get them started. Let me give it to you. Every generation has its purpose. Ours is to reveal the truth and reverse the brainwashing. That's what we do right here. Let me get this out the way. All right.
The views and opinions expressed on The Open Eye are those of the hosts, guests, and contributors, and do not reflect the policy or position of WHGE 95.3 FM, nor our sponsor, the Delaware Center for Homeless Vets. Any content provided by Open Eye's hosts, guests, or contributors are theirs and are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, company, or individual.
WHGE 95.3 FM. Let's get them started. Okay, I'm going to start here. This is just in case we have some new listeners. All right. The speed of communication is wondrous to behold. It is also true that speed can multiply the distribution of information that we know to be untrue. It's a quote from Edward R. Murrow. In the current 24-second news cycle, information reaches the masses at blinding speed. Unfortunately, this information is often poorly researched and filled with falsehood and misinformation. This leaves us with an uneducated, uninformed, misled, misinformed community. Mainstream media, which is completely corporate owned, has become nothing more than stenographers and mouthpieces for the powers that be, rarely exploring or investigating anything beyond what they are told. Mainstream journalism has become a joke. The joke is fair and balanced reporting. Unfortunately, it is a joke on the uninformed, misinformed community. I simply cannot accept that there are on every story two equal and logical sides to an argument. Once again, Edward R. Murrow. For those of you that don't know who Edward R. Murrow is, he is really the prototype of broadcast journalism. I call him my journalistic hero. There are 1,500 newspapers, 1,100 magazines, 9,000 radio stations, 1,500 TV stations, 2,400 publishers owned by only 3 corporations. Welcome to the Open Eye Radio Show. What is the Open Eye about? The Open Eye Radio Show is about keeping your vision clear. The Open Eye is about well-researched, accurate reporting and honest, fearless social political commentary free of corporate influence. Our community must have information not based on emotionalism, sensationalism, or manipulation, but information that is well analyzed, clear, and concise that will educate the community. We must control the propaganda that reaches our community. We understand the importance of this. It is for this reason we have decided to take on the responsibility of keeping our community well informed. Join us every Saturday at 11 a.m. on WHGE 95.3 FM, The Open Eye. After Park Company, when an African vehemently denies Mother Africa. They got him. Meanwhile, white people on vacation on Boho Beach and shopping at the McCollum Market. Pay attention to details. There's levels to this. I am a black man. The blood of the Nile flows through my veins. The pounding of the drum is the rhythm of my heart. The wisdom of the ages dwells in the researches of my soul. Oneness with the Creator sustains my spirit. Mother Africa cries for me in anguish, for I was ripped from her womb in my infancy. Neither capture, slavery, oppression, segregation, miseducation, integration, assimilation, immorality, nor manipulation could deafen my ears to Mother Africa. Seek your brother, she cries. Nothing can stop me when I stand with my brother. Take heart, my brother, tomorrow could be ours, if we would but seize the day. For we have always owned the night. We are black men. Hey, Brother Bourne. All right. The black woman. Our history shouts the black woman has been the key to our survival in the oppressed African colony in America. Who possesses the eloquence to sufficiently express how important the Nubian queen is and has been to the black man in America? She is our mother, our primary nurturer, and first teacher. She is our sister. She sacrificed her dignity, body, and soul to save us from the master's whip. She is the most suitable woman for marriage. Who else can understand our frustrated, oppressed spirit and soothe our tattered soul? The Nubian queen is the field from which the black man must produce our future. It is for the aforementioned reason that black men should become incensed whenever we see black women not afforded the respect, dignity commensurate with her contribution to our survival as a people. Yes, I know you want her. I don't blame you. She can change your life with her smile. Even when being modest, she can stop. Her walk can stop traffic. She can look at you and make you drop to your knees and thank God you're a man. Her embrace is paradise. There's no one else like her. God, I love the African queen. What's up, Brother Vaughn? I see you there, bro. All right. All right. WHGE 95.3 FM. The Open Eye. Your host, Patrice Gibbs. Conservatism. What is it? The intense fear that somewhere, somehow, someone you think is inferior is being treated as your equal. They scared to death of that. Earlier, I mentioned that Edward R. Murrow is my journalistic hero. And I've talked about it before, and I had people say, how can you say Edward R. Murrow when there was people like Max Robinson on TV? When I say my journalist, I meant my broadcast journalistic hero. It's because of the truth that he brought to his work. In 1960, he presented a documentary called Harvest of Shame. Harvest of Shame was a 1960 television documentary, like I said, presented by Edward R. Murrow on CBS, that showed the plight of American migrant agricultural workers during that time, most of whom were black. It was Murrow's final documentary for the network. For CBS, he left soon after that. An investigative report intended to shock Americans into action. It was the first time millions of Americans were given a close look at what it means to live in poverty on their TVs. The program was an installment of the television documentary series CBS Reports, widely seen as the successor to Murrow's highly regarded 1951-58 CBS program, See It Now. The program originally aired just after Thanksgiving Day in November 1960. Let's see here, okay. The opening of the documentary is voiced over footage of migrant workers, including a number of African Americans being recruited. This scene is not taking place in the Congo. It has nothing to do with Johannesburg or Cape Town. It is not Nyasaland or Nigeria. This is Florida. These are citizens of the United States, 1960. This is a shape-up for migrant workers. The hawkers are chanting the going peace rate at the various fields. This is the way the humans who harvest the food for best-fed people in the world get hired. One farmer looked at this and said, "We used to own our slaves, now we just rent them." Murrow describes the story as an American story, which moves from Florida to New Jersey. Murrow calls it a 1960s grapes of wrath of unrepresented people who work 136 days of the year and make $900 a year. Throughout the documentary are numerous interviews conducted by David Lowe in his 9 months of field reporting of people working in the industry. The report starts in Florida. There, Mrs. Dobie, the mother of 9 children, describes picking strawberries and cherries. The children work with her except for her baby. Her average dinner consists of a pot of beans or corn. She could not afford milk more than once a week for her children. Jerome, a 9-year-old child, is taking care of his 3 infant sisters while his mother is at work. The family sleeps on a bed with a hole in it because of rats. As Jerome says, as Jerome says, the mother cannot afford daycare, which costs 85 cents a day. After working from 6 a.m. to 4 p.m., he has only made $1. We used to own our slaves, now we rent them. The people travel on buses for thousands of miles to look for work and sometimes sleep outside during their travels. They often have too little food for dinner. The travels can take up to 4 days, with rides lasting about 10 hours each without stops for food or facilities. The story moves from Florida to North Carolina. A camp in Elizabeth City has one source of water for the whole camp and no sanitary facilities. Mrs. Brown, 37, started working in the fields when she was 8 years old. She hopes to get out of the work, but does not think it will happen. Merle describes the complaints most workers have, such as bad housing, flies, mosquitoes, dirty beds and mattresses, unsanitary toilets, and the lack of hot water for bathing. One employer of hundreds of workers is asked, "Are the workers happy people?" "Oh, they love it." The trucks move north from North Carolina to Virginia and Maryland for beans, asparagus, and tomatoes. Every year there are accidents on the road that often result in injury or death, since workers are very compactly packed into the backs of trucks. There's no interstate standard for the transportation of migrant workers. Merle then describes the conditions in labor camps. In New Jersey, a labor camp has 2 outhouses and 2 water taps. Families live in one room and often sleep in one bed. Lunch is served to children in the camp. A bottle of milk and a couple of crackers. Children of migrant laborers have low levels of literacy. And out of 5,000 children of migrant workers, only 1 out of 5,000, only 1 finishes high school. The children are anxious to get an education, but they cannot get help from their parents, often illiterate themselves. While federal legislation is hoped for by the workers, issues include the variability in terms of wages, types of labor, and the transient nature of the lives of migrant workers. For example, the crop does not always sell at the same price because the largest purchasers can dictate the prices from their buying power, which affects how the workers are paid. Farm labor is excluded from federal legislation, despite the fact that laborers travel from state to state every year. In November, the cycle starts all over again. The migrants moving back south. Merle's closing words are these: the migrants have no lobby. Only an enlightened, aroused, and perhaps angered public opinion can do anything about the migrants. The people you have seen have the strength to harvest your fruit and vegetables. They do not have the strength to influence legislation. Maybe we do. Good night, good luck. That's from Edward R. Merle. That's why he's my journalistic hero. And guess what? It's still going on. WHGE 95.3 FM, The Open Eye. Hey, Nsoromma, I see you there. WHGE 95.3 FM, the Open Eye. I'm Patrice Gibbs. You know, it's something, it took a war for slavery to end in America. Why did slavery last so long? I heard a brother talking about this. One of the reasons, one of the primary reasons, is because there are millions of poor white people. And these poor white people have been fooled by the elites into participating in the oppression of people that are just below the poverty rate of these poor white people. What these poor white people didn't understand is that they themselves are actually slaves. They are slaves, and I'm going to explain that to you a little later. They are slaves with just a little more, I can say, income. Just barely above the zero count that slaves receive. We used to own their slaves, now we have to rent them. Yes, they were rented slaves. Now, of course, slavery never ended in America. It just evolved with the labor lease laws and putting black men back on plantations through the prison system. Well, guess what? I just talked to you about migrant workers. Now, what happened in places like Florida with, what's his name? Ron DeSatan, the imperial wizard of the Banana Republic of Florida, is that those in the prison system are now working the farms. Because, you know, a lot of the immigrants, Hispanic immigrants, have left these jobs because of fear of going to jail or being shipped back to the oppression that they were dealing with in their own country. So these workers had to be replaced. When the white people come in, trying to, they take our jobs, okay, go on down there to that farm, get your ass on that farm and pick that fruit. Because you could believe that the immigrants who were working these farms, and some still are, of course, were not being paid wages that they could actually live on. Of course, who is in America? We used to own our slaves, now we rent them. It's easier to rent slaves now because you ain't got to worry about feeding them. The government that houses them in these prisons feed them now. We used to own our slaves, now we rent them. In a criminal justice system supposedly premised on innocent until proven guilty, pre-trial detention centers are the exception to the rule. On any given day in 2021, more than 514,000 people were locked up in city and county facilities, colloquially known as jails. According to the Prison Policy Initiative, 80% of these detainees had not been convicted of the crime for which they were arrested and detained. Even though the U.S. Constitution guarantees the right to a trial by jury and forbids excessive bail, the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights notes that 60% of America's jail population is in prison simply because it cannot afford cash bail. Black men keep mysteriously dying in South Carolina's largest jails. The U.S. Department of Justice wants to know why. Even worse, no one actually knows how many innocent people are killed each year while being held in America's mass incarceration loophole. Among this cruel and unusual form of punishment, South Carolina stands head and shoulders above the rest. The Justice Department announced 2 civil rights investigations into conditions at two detention centers in South Carolina. The Sheriff Al Cannon Detention Center in Charleston and the Alvin S. Glenn Detention Center in Columbia. According to Assistant Attorney General Kristen Clark for the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division, the department has received credible evidence of medical neglect, use of force, sexual assaults, and homicides inside the state's 2 largest pretrial facilities. In a press release, the Department of Justice said the decision was justified based on an extensive review of publicly available information and information gathered from stakeholders. The Alvin S. Glenn Detention Center, operated by Richland County, South Carolina, has long been at the center of turmoil. In October 2022, a routine inspection found more than a dozen violations of minimum standards. In January, inmates posted a series of TikTok videos showing raw sewage flooding the facility, undercooked food, and victims who were brutalized by guards and denied medical care. More than 50 people have been assaulted, injured, and killed in Alvin S. Glenn during the past 2 years, including 27-year-old Layson Butler. In February 2022, after being incarcerated for 2 weeks, Butler was found dead in a cell with no running water. 2 weeks. He's in a cell with no running water, naked and covered with rat bites. They killed him and left him there. According to a lawsuit filed by Butler's family, Butler had lost 40 pounds, was placed in solitary confinement, and denied medical care, despite correctional officers knowing that Butler suffered from mental health problems. Remember, in America, being black and mentally ill is against the law. That sounds crazy, but that is the reality. God forbid you as a black person have a mental health crisis or issue. The response from the police, if they don't lock you up, is to kill your ass. Butler's tragic demise mirrors the death of D'Angelo Brown, who was found unconscious, covered in vomit and excrement at the Al Cannon Detention Center in Charleston County, South Carolina. Brown, whose death was ruled a homicide due to gross medical neglect, suffered from schizophrenia and was repeatedly observed eating his own feces during his 4-month incarceration. This man is sick, he's mentally ill, but he's black. Gross medical neglect. Who knows what else they did to him? According to a report by Justice Innovation Labs in Loyola University in Chicago, black men in Charleston County are arrested at 5 times the rate white men are, but account for 66% of the cases dismissed by prosecutors. You understand what that means? In a place, in a area, all of America, we are over-policed, locked up for nothing. If we do make bail, 66% of the time, the charges are dropped because we didn't do a goddamn thing. If we don't make bail, likelihood is it's a death sentence. A person's financial assets should not affect how long presumably innocent people wait for trial. From Rikers to Richland, nothing about this says justice. Exactly how rich do you have to be to keep this country from throwing you away? WHGE 95.3 FM, Dove and I. Brother Mishba, I see you, brother. All right. Nsoromma won't be in today. He's on his way to a competition. All right. Yeah, I got time. Okay. WHGE 95.3 FM, Dove and I. Oh, we got a lot more for you right here. Don't get it mixed. Let me see here. No, I don't want to do that. Wait a minute. Oh, I'm with you. Don't worry. All right. You know, it's something I know some of my family don't like this. I actually had somebody say, "Oh, you can't talk about him like that because a lot of people follow him." I wouldn't give a damn. You're totally cool with Joel Osteen, T.D. Jakes, Clifford Dollar, and other mega church ministers. If you're cool with them having a $10.4 million mansion, but you think food stamps are wasteful or a wasteful spending cut, you need to reevaluate your so-called Christian values. Religion is trash. It's easy enough to tell the poor to accept their poverty as God's will. This ideal that to be close to God, to be a good Christian, a good Muslim, a good Jew, or whatever, you have to be poor. You have to suffer. That's what God wants you. Who the hell came up with that? I'll tell you who. The same people that got warm clothes, plenty of food, medical care, a roof over their head, and no worry about the rent. But if you want to, but they want you to believe, try to share some of their poverty and see if you can accept it as God's will. There was a God, he didn't mean this to be so. Some of the churches are waking up. All right, with this fight against CRT by the ignorant, cowardly white educators. Black churches in Florida are stepping up. And they're teaching non-whitewash black history since the state won't. Ask any elderly black person and any black historian in general, and likely they'll tell you what a pivotal role the black church played during the civil rights movement of the 50s and 60s. And this is from an article by Zach Lindley. I was hip to it by my brother Vaughn. It was where protests were planned, the black church, where leaders congregated, where the community came to support each other, where resources were shared with black people in need, and it was often where the black youth was educated in lieu of an American institution of education that was unwilling to teach anything that would empower any generation of black Americans. And now there's a certain loud and powerful segment of the U.S. that is bound and determined to make America great again. by restoring mainstream American culture to one that ignores the nation's deep history of racism and its effect on modern day America. One that oppresses and seeks the subjugation of the non-white, non-male, non-Christian, non-heterosexual, and non-cisgender. I don't like that term, that cis crap. I'll talk about that later. I'm not a cis male, I'm a black man. The hell out of here with that crap. But we have an education system that's being pushed by those that want to make America great again, that moves to disenfranchise voters of color, and one that is currently on a mission to uphold the whitewashing of American history to the benefit of white people and the expense of everyone else. This means the black church must once again take on the role of educating the communities they serve. And none of these churches know the importance of that like the ones in Florida. Now that Florida has approved teaching K through 12 students that enslaved black people benefited from slavery, approved classroom materials provided by PragerU, which was founded by a proud racist, and produced educational videos teaching that Frederick Douglass would have agreed that America's choice to prioritize white supremacy over ending slavery, and rejected an advanced placement course covering African American studies. Hundreds of black congregations around the Sunshine State have taken it upon themselves to teach what America wants. My initial reaction was disbelief, and then it turned to anger, said Pastor Alfonso Jackson Jr. of New Shiloh Missionary Baptist Church in Miami. Told his feelings to NBC News regarding Florida's new standard for lying about American slavery. Jackson is now using an online toolkit created by an activist group, Faith in Florida. The toolkit is essentially a one-stop shop for books, documentaries, and videos that can pick up the slack that the Florida education system leaves in its teaching of U.S. history. The toolkit is also being used by Pastor Sharon Raleigh of Agape Perfection Praise and Worship Center in Orlando, which taught its first African-American history masterclass last week to an audience of about 100 parishioners, including a group of middle school boys. Because we have families who have students who are registered in our public school system, we know that there are certain pieces of information relevant to our history that are not going to be taught. All right. Here's a little on the toolkit according to NPR. This toolkit is not a curriculum, but a guide with recommended books, documentaries to watch, and articles to read. It covers the history of the transatlantic slave trade through the civil rights movement to the killing of George Floyd. Patrice said that black churches need to make sure children get the full picture. So we want the true history of America to be known. And so that can only be done if we tell the truth about what has happened and learn from that so that it will not be repeated again. The course culminates with a trip to Alabama in the spring. They'll visit some of the most important sites of the civil rights movement. The great thing about this, besides the fact that there are places black kids can go to learn history that isn't centered around appeasing white fragility, is that Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, nor his rabid band of woke, averse Florida education officials can really do anything about this. It's not like they can yank a church's tax exempt status because they don't like what the shepherd is teaching its flock. That's why black pastors have never really needed to be shy about the way they tell the truth. So unless the Satan and his white nationalists against wokeness pals plan to start bombing black churches the way white people did the last time America was great, all they can do is lead these black congregations to their own devices. And that means allowing the youth to learn instead of being indoctrinated by those purporting to fight indoctrination. At least it's a start. WHGE 95.3 FM, The Open Eye. The importance of the black church to the African American actually cannot be discounted. The black church, as explained earlier, was freedom's incubator. During slavery, many of the black churches were stations on the Underground Railroad. During Reconstruction and the Great Migration, the black church was the center of our community and helped the newly freed transition socially, educationally, politically, and economically. The civil rights movement was actually planned and implemented in and from the black church. That's a historical fact. Now, with that being said, let me ask you something. Were a slave masters not Christian, what would you be? Christianity was indeed forced to bind black people, as was Islam and Judaism. Take this from the Bible. When I became a man, I put aside things of my youth. Christianity, Islam, Judaism are all slave religions. Furthermore, Christianity, Islam, Judaism are all male chauvinist murder cults. All of them without exception. People conquer you, they declare war on your God and your God concept and give you a God concept that looks like and benefits them. When a people accept a God that has been assigned to them by another people, they can never be psychologically free. All three major religions are watered down versions of African spirituality tailored to benefit their primary purveyors. Now, what's interesting is that some of our leaders, Adam Clayton Powell Jr. was a minister, and of course, Dr. King. It was an interesting relationship Dr. King had with the black church. Here we are 55 years after his death. King remains a prophet without honor in the institution that nurtured him, the black church. At the time of Dr. King's death, the vast majority of black churches considered him a troublemaker. And he was not welcome in many black churches. And what they do now? Now they pay mealy-mouthed, pious irrelevancies to his legacy a couple of times a year, but do not speak truth to power as Dr. King did. Most well-known black ministers are more concerned with prosperity preaching instead of liberation theology, which is not profitable. WHGE 95.3 FM, The Open Eye. Doing a great job. Hey, thank you, brother. Brother Mishbah. All right. Got a few things left here. Let's see. I have to go overtime here. All right. Patrice Gibbs on The Open Eye. You know, it's something, how when we invest in things and, make efforts to make things happen for our people in our communities and what have you, we have to fight those that want to take any progress we may make away from us. All right? And this progress that we have to fight for, and those we have to fight against, of course, are white Americans and the U.S. government. Don't get it mixed. Don't get it mixed. HBCUs. HBCUs were actually historically looted. White heist. The historically white heist. How America illegally looted HBCUs. Right? Crime is a noun, an illegal act for which someone can be punished by the government. A grave offense, especially against morality. Law, a rule of conduct or action prescribed or formally recognized as binding or enforced by controlling authority. The Biden administration notified America of its part in a $13 billion heist. In joint letters to Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Mississippi, Missouri, North Carolina, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, Virginia, West Virginia Secretary of Education Miguel Cardona and Secretary of Agriculture Tom Vilsack demanded that governors of their respective states fix a multi-billion-dollar funding disparity between land-grant historically black colleges and universities and predominantly white counterparts using readily available data from the National Center of Education Statistics Integrated Post-Secondary Education Surveying that ranges from 1987 to 2020. We calculated the amount that these institutions would have received if their state funding per student were equal to that of 1862 institutions. Explained letters to 16 governors from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. The letters added that states were required by law to provide an equitable distribution of funds between historically black institutions and the formally, meaning traditionally segregated white institutions. But America is not a nation of laws. Laws are more than words scrawled on parchment. Laws are supposed to be enforced. Laws redress wrongs and punish criminal activity. And when it comes to the great white heist that handicapped historically black colleges and universities, the crimes go unpunished. The laws have never been enforced. And it's a heist that went on for centuries. And still, our people's resilience, even with substandard resources. How many times have I told you? Even with substandard resources, we turn out quality, educated people. How the hell do we manage that? That's who we are. Even in segregated schools, from the time that schools were allowed, or from the time that black people came out of out of chattel slavery, out of plantation slavery, up to the day, we've educated our own successfully. And to hamper that, what do? They steal the resources, they segregate the resources, and still we rise. And we something else. WHGE 95.3 FM. Dove and I ain't through with you quite yet. I know it's 12 o'clock. Yeah, I got something else. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. I got something else for you. I ain't through with you. Remember what I told you earlier? Mm-hmm. Yeah. What do they say now? We used to own our slaves. Now we rent them. All right. The real triumph of the right wing of conservatism has come in shaping the national conversation around the size of government and the budget deficit, thereby diverting attention from what's really going on. The increasing concentration of the nation's income and wealth at the very top, while most Americans fall further and further behind. I was telling you, the migrant workers don't get a living wage. Who the hell does? We used to own our slaves. Now we rent them. Is employment a modern kind of slavery? Yes, I believe it is. And in most employment settings, the people that write the checks control your time. The projects that you can work on, how much you make, how you can and can't dress, and more. If that's not the definition of slavery, then I do not know what is. How in the hell could a man enjoy being awakened at 6:30 a.m. by an alarm clock, leap out of bed, dress, force feed, go to the bathroom, brush his teeth and hair, and fight traffic to get to a place where essentially you made lots of money for somebody else and were asked to be grateful for the opportunity to do so? Now, we know what's going on in the world. And what a lot of people are saying is that this thing in the Middle East with Israel and Palestine and what have you is going to lead to a world war. It's going to lead to World War III. This is a war. Whether Russia and the U.S. go to war or whether the U.S. will take on China. And it's a war between slave masters, okay? This is something I got from this white guy, you know, who posted this, and he said this. We need to understand what's going on. We used to own our slaves, now we rent them. If you have a job where you have to earn a wage and you have to dress a certain way, you have to show up a certain way, I don't give a damn what your race is. You're a wage slave. It's nothing but modern day slavery. And when the slave masters fight, you don't side with one or another master. You don't side with my master. You take advantage of the fact that they're fighting to overthrow the whole institution of slavery to get free. And say that again. Are you listening, Africa? You take advantage of the fact that they're fighting to overthrow the whole institution of slavery to get free. And this is how we have to look at it when these imperialists fight. We're not rooting for our imperialists. We are welcoming the defeat of these modern day slave masters and whatever they undertake. Okay? Because that is one step, or it could be, if we do our work right, one step closer to being able to make a revolution to overthrow them all together. We don't own our slaves, now we rent them. WHGE 95.3 FM. This is The Open Eye. And as I always tell you, destiny determines who enters your life, but you decide who stays. Therefore, value those who value you and don't treat those as a priority who treat you as an option. I'm Patrice Gibbs. This has been The Open Eye. Thanks for joining us. All right. Thanks for joining us. Thank you, Brother Mishbah. Hey, Vic, I see you there, brother. All right. Hope you enjoyed the show. And like I always tell you, global African supremacy. Because the world was a much better place when a black man ruled.